3, 2, 1. Before listening to the podcast, Fragments of Silicon would like you to review the changes to our privacy policy.
That was something we were saving for our Tuesday show, but that got delayed a month, so
Right.
it gets recycled here. Anyway, I'm your host, Adam. Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. The regular crew here is here, Sans Mac. He's off this week because he's too tired, as is often the case in this modern era. Anyway, we have a bit of a format switch this week because our guest has places to be sooner rather than later. So we will dive right into the interview, and we will be welcoming back to the program after, I don't know, how many years has it been? Anyway, Bill Swartz of Mastiff.
That's me.
Oh, good. So how are you doing tonight?
Good. You know, I'm learning a lot.
That's always handy. Yeah.
Like, you know, a lesson I learned really recently?
What?
Do you know what happens when you mix human DNA and goat DNA?
Not a clue.
I'm assuming not actual satyrs.
No, but you do get kicked out of the petting zoo.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't expecting that turn.
Just
Anyway.
felt like sharing. I feel better now that we've discussed it.
Indeed. It's... Anyway, if I'm recalling correctly, the last time we had you on the program was around the time of Gurman's PC release.
Was it Goodman PC? Wow. I was a young man back then.
It was a while ago. And I guess as our first question is Gurman on the 3DS. I don't think we ever got a chance to talk about that version since it didn't exist at that point in time.
Yeah,
So-
that would get in the way.
Yeah. So I suppose it would be prudent to ask, what did you have to do in order to bring that game to that particular platform?
Suffer. We're talking pain. You know, was it Mike Tyson who said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face? That was basically that entire project. There were two, maybe three big issues. And it's one of those things where you're prepared for it. I mean, how hard can it be? And then you deal with it. And it's like, oh my God, how's it this hard? But so problem one, which is pretty minor, but still it's not minor, it's more minor. And that's the architecture of the 3DS. 3DS is in 3D, hence the name. And you see 3D with your two eyes. But what that means is you're not actually writing images to a screen. That would be cool. That'd be easy. Hey, 32 frames a second or whatever, displayed on one frame, on one screen, we're good. What you're essentially doing for all practical purposes is actually writing to two screens. And that is what they call computationally expensive. And unfortunately, this is a really old game. Or put differently, it's a game written for the PC when, you know, PCs had enough power that you could have really bad architecture. And it didn't really matter because the computer would just, however inefficient it was, you know, it's like if you're packing for a trip and you got a big SUV, you know, who cares if you throw in an extra 50 pounds of junk? It just doesn't matter. It's a corner of the trunk. But if you're backpacking, it's a huge difference. So on top of having to really draw two screens at the same time, the entire program, I am not making this up, I will take an oath, was written as one big loop. No modules, no anything, just one, it wasn't even C++, one C something, like early C# loop, checking everything through each cycle. And that was a big problem. And then on top of that, because we ended up doing all this work to get the program to run efficiently to draw the two screens, we had to deal with the other standard stuff you deal with, moving to 3DS, like to save programming cycles. Like one of the big things you end up doing is working really, really hard to make sure you're drawing only what can be seen. Fulcrum culling, it's called. And that took a long time. So there's all of that. And then the next thing we discovered is there are people out there who love Goodman. We love Goodman. It is a great game. I really think there are very few action adventures in the world any better. But, there were a lot of people had no idea what it was. And it's like, oh, it's this old Japanese cutesy game. Cool. Well, I don't like cutesy games. It's like, well, yeah, it's cute. But it's also a pretty hardcore game that will kind of kick your ass. And, eventually some people got it, but it was more a marketing communications challenge than we had expected. That is how Goodman 3DS went. But you know what? Fun though it is to bitch about it, end of the day, I think we did a really good job. We got great reviews. Commercially, it was okay. And it was a good experience. So there you go.
It's, not surprising given the limitations of the 3DS, like that it would have been a tight squeeze. But yeah didn't know about all the programming issues.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in the boxing ring. It's not that hard. Here's what we're going to do. And then you get punched in the face, and suddenly everything feels a lot more real.
Indeed. And how long did it take you to bring Gurman to the 3DS?
A lot longer than it should have. We got the whole thing done in, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, and that'd be painful. But I'm going to say 11 months for what was sort of slated to be a 5 to 6 month project.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I forget, did Gurman ever get a physical release on the 3DS? Or was it eShop?
No, eShop only.
Like,
but I'll tell you what, if you'd like to pre-order 30,000 units right now, I'll give you my bank account number, and we'll ship you 30,000 units.
I'm like, I'm good.
All right, well, if you change my mind, you guys know how to get in touch with me.
Yes. And I suppose that flows to the next question is, was this the last hurrah of Gurman?
Probably. I don't know. Actually, no, I take that back. It depends on what you mean. Do I see us doing a whole new version of Goodman? Goodman 60, Goodman Kingdom Hearts, featuring Fruits Baskets? Probably not. I don't think Nihon Falcom, and I can't speak for them, I'm speculating here, is that focused on extending that franchise right now. But I would love to see Goodman living in more places. There's no reason why it couldn't be a great, especially now that everyone's got these beautiful screens, phone game, for example. There's no reason why it couldn't be on a Fire Stick or, any of these other devices. So no, you probably have not seen the last of Goodman.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I'd imagine it'd probably do, something on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, we've talked about that so many times. I would love to do a Switch version, and it would be the perfect console for it.
Yeah, I guess at the very least, it wouldn't be it's basically a full-fledged console. Just you can.
Oh, it is.
So it wouldn't be as problematic as the 3DS. But...
Oh no! Oh, from a programming standpoint, and at this point, all those issues are solved anyway. Mm-hmm. So no, from a programming standpoint, it would be pretty straightforward to do. The other issue too is we just have so many chips to spend, and we're really busy, like everybody else, I'm sure. But we've just got a ton of stuff going on.
Of course, and we'll get that in a bit. But speaking of the Switch, you did put out a game for that last year called Party Planet,
We did.
Like, and exactly what is this thing?
Party Planet.
Mm-hmm.
Party Planet is more or less what the name implies. It is a collection of games, 30 party games for up to 4 players. It's designed, one of the big things about Mastiff is we pride ourselves on low barrier to entry products. And by that, I mean probably because I don't want to send. There are people out there who, spend 30 hours or whatever just learning how to play Dota. That's not me, and I don't think that's most people. So one of the things we've always prided ourselves on as a company is to make the games accessible. That doesn't mean easy. That doesn't mean simple. That doesn't mean not challenging. It just means, a player should never feel like they're playing the interface. They should feel like they're playing the game. It just means that if it's complicated, the game should be telling you what to do, not expecting you to either Google it or, find a manual somewhere. And
or at least telling you what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Party Plan is kind of an extension of that philosophy. It's a bunch of games. They're very accessible. Oh, I should add, by the way, the other thing we really wanted to do, because there wasn't one, was produce a family game for the Switch. I mean, there's a couple, but nothing that we thought was a really compelling product. And the fact is, it's supposed to be a family machine. The dad, the mom, the kids sitting together. And that was sort of what this was looking to provide.
And did it find a receptive audience in the Nintendo Switch?
Yes, actually. We were very, very pleased with it.
I mean, I won't lie. I'm kind of really
Skeptical?
glad. Well, I'm kind of really glad that we have moved away from the infinite mini game collections that the Wii had. But there is still a place for them.
Yeah, the problem isn't having that; it's having a lack of other things that sometimes happens.
Well, and the problem is shovelware. I mean, I remember, what was the company called? It came from Williams. It went out of business. Forgot what it's called. But they had like a collection of party games that was averaging like 15, literally 50. You know what I'm talking about. The box had like a dartboard on it with a dart.
Yeah,
in
Game Party, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if you looked at the reviews, that thing was literally averaging in the 15 to 20%. I mean, it was broken and unplayable, and it sold literally millions of copies. And to me, that's the way to turn early gamers, inexperienced gamers off gaming. And I think that has sort of games like that, which were just, opportunistic, also kind of tainted the genre a little bit.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I mean, that was certainly not the only culprits in terms of shitty mini game collections.
No.
I mean, I'm sure I could. There was Deca Sports, there was the Carnival games. Just.
Oh, I disagree with you, sir. The first Carnival games, I mean, equal. I don't know enough about, but the very first Carnival game I thought was really nicely done, and that was a good play experience.
Not so much the second one, though.
Yeah.
The point of order is, there were a lot of bad mini-game collections on the Wii. And also the other consoles of the era. Like, there were bad Kinect party games. There were bad Move. All of these shovelware titles kind of killed the genre for a while. And my question is, how did you go about avoiding this pitfall with Party Planet here?
Well, first off, we just kind of ignored it. I mean, the game is what it is, and we did the best job we could. We tried to get together, and I think we did it. 30 games that were fun to play. We released it at what we thought was a fair value for what it was. We didn't go out there with the intent of, shoving it in checkout lines down people's throat. We made it available to gamers who were interested in playing games anyway. And as I say, it worked okay. People enjoyed it. We're pleased with it. Sort of, what do you want from an entertainment product?
It depends on the product, I think.
Exactly. That's exactly right. From a family entertainment product that was explicitly marketed. I mean, the reason it's called Party Planet was the idea is everyone's at a party, and the tagline for this is there's a party and the whole world is invited, and that was really the philosophy going in.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of these days, I'm not exactly sure. Just because there aren't many mini game collections these days. Yeah.
Well, you don't need them anymore.
No, I'm not saying that we do. I'm just saying, um, back in the Wii era, you would need to stand out. You would need a hook to entice people because, when you've got so many of these things coming out from Nintendo, no less, you've got to have a thing that makes your thing more desirable than the other things. In terms of today, well, you can just be a mini game collection and not have to sweat the competition so much.
Right.
Anyway, in terms of Party Planet, did it do well enough to warrant a sequel?
That's a good question. Yes and no. We're moving in. We're staying in this space now on on PS4 and Xbox with a game shipping fairly soon called Arcade Islands. It's not really a sequel. I mean, it does share some elements, and it incorporates a lot of things we learned by doing this. But it's not a sequel. It's not a port. It's a new product that shares some elements. It's kind of a side story. It's not literally a side story, but think of it as a side story. And we're excited about it. We think it's going to do fine. We think it's going to make people happy. So yeah, I'd love to continue in this. I'd love to do after we get Arcade Islands out. I'd like to go through and do another product. Probably somehow maybe combining the best of the two of them. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, it was a good experience. It was good for us. Players were happy. Everyone was happy.
Indeed. And before we continue on, I suppose we should play the sizzle reel since we're getting into the new stuff.
All right, I will get that open. All right, I should be ready to go.
All right, then proceed. So with that out of the way, getting back to Arcade Islands Volume 1, now to clarify things, this isn't actual arcade games from yesteryear. These are more arcade-style mini-games, correct?
That is correct. Now, some of them are a little bit inspired by arcade games from yesteryear, a little bit. But yes, these are arcade-style mini-games.
And I suppose to be more specific, what games are contained in here?
Oh my God, there's 35 of them, and I don't have them all memorized. But okay. So you've got a great game where you're using lightning to stop invading Vikings. You've got another one where you have to repel their ships. You have another one where you're taking down a bug invasion. You have something that sort of looks a little bit like the old game Shanghai. You have something that might look just a hair like Space Invaders, but with a modern twist to it.
Like, that's a pretty robust collection from the sound of things.
Oh, it's a very robust collection, and a lot of time has gone into making it fun and playable and well balanced. The other thing that I think makes Arcade Islands really cool is we just totally blatantly ripped off Candy Crush. Oh wait, are we on the air?
I hope we are.
This isn't going out live, is it? Because what I meant to say, no, we did not rip off Candy Crush.
You innovated a new style of match 3 puzzle game.
Exactly. No, and those are the smartest guys in the world. We will, worship their toenail clippings. But I don't mean gameplay itself. I mean a big chunk of the meta game. So here's the problem with doing a collection of mini games. You take X number of mini games, 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, and you throw them together. And even assuming that you've taken the time so they're fun to play and the controls work and it's well balanced and so on, and it's tempting not to, because getting it 95% done is really easy. Getting it 100% done takes a lot of work. But even assuming you go the extra step and you get it really nicely done, as I think we do, it can get really boring. I mean, how many sort of smaller games do you want to play? And when I say we're influenced by other games, what I meant was worked really hard to make sure we had a compelling, what we call meta game. So the reason it's called Arcade Islands is because it's islands that have arcades on them. And actually the island sort of is the arcade. It's spread out all over each island. And so you go into the islands. On every island, you've got the ability to become ruler. And as you become ruler of more islands, you accumulate treasure, which you get to put in your treasure room. There's also a map that displays your progress versus that of your friends, which makes it a much more social thing. Together with a variety of leader. There's also a couch mode, so you can play in person. So the idea being, you're always going to feel compelled to play the next mini game, not just the next mini game or game, then all that mini. Is fun, but because it advances this bigger goal. That's kind of the glue that holds it together, and that's the glue a lot of compilations.
So are most of these mini games single player ones that you can kind of play semi-competitively, or are there any that are like literally head to head or co-op?
Yes, to all of those. It's a mixed bag.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, but yes, there's some of all of those.
And are all the mini games unlockable from the start, or do you have to go through like a single player mode to unlock things?
You are so smart. That is such a great question. And if I can have another, since we're not on the air, if I can share another moment of honesty, looking back at our first journey into mini games, one of the things we realized we got wrong is we had too many games locked, and they were all too hard to unlock. So most of the games, not all of them, are unlocked from the beginning, and the ones that aren't are pretty straightforward. If you're playing normally, by the time you get to them, you will be ready. They will sort of be unlocked. So again, I talk about low barriers to entry and not being needlessly frustrating. Let's make the games fun, and let's not punish players just because they want to play a game.
And is there any online multiplayer, or is it all local only?
It's all local.
Makes sense, given the nature of the game.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm just getting bored with chill and Netflix. This seems like a much better approach.
Well, and a lot of these games sound like they'd have really terrible problems with if there was any kind of connection lag, just because.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
I totally blocked that shot. No, it wasn't on my screen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you low ping time jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And this is coming to the Xbox One and PlayStation 4?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So why those platforms instead of the Nintendo Switch?
Because we just done a game on the Switch, and it just seemed like a good opportunity.
I get you. You've got one product there already, but no product of this sort on those consoles.
Yeah, and especially on the PS4, I mean, there's really not much in that genre there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The Xbox One did have that Kinect support early on, so there were some games developed for that back a few years ago.
Right, when everyone thought Kinect was going to like rule the world.
Yeah. Clearly that didn't happen. I'm like, it's like I'm not sure if there's anything further to say about the Kinect, but
it was a really good piece of technology, and it really did actually pretty well. But I think expectations for it were just ridiculously high.
I suppose it looks like people didn't take to the second incarnation of the tech, for whatever reason. Right. Anyway, so moving forward.
Moving right along, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so the next one up is Heavy Fire Red Shadow. Now,
yes.
This is the latest installment of the long-running Heavy Fire franchise, which I don't think we've actually talked about before. But and this one is kind of different from the others because, from what I'm remembering, the old Heavy Fire titles are like third-person shooters, and this one is kind of this is a turret game.
Right. The earlier Heavy Fires were all really on rails, sort of House of the Dead style. And if you remember an old arcade game called Beachhead 2000,
kind of rings a vague bell.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. It's a turret. It's mainly a turret game. It's not entirely a turret game, and there's other stuff, but it's basically a turret game.
Right. And with this, so why the switch to the 360-degree style?
Because it's a lot of fun. Because no one's done it in a long time. I mean, really, those sound flip, but there's inspiration for it. So, I always get this wrong, but there's like a story about stone soup where a guy says, I can make stone soup. And he goes to his neighbor's house and it's like, I can make stone soup. You just need to give me a carrot just to round it out. And they're like, great. And then he goes to the next neighbor's house and I can make stone soup. Just give me an onion because that rounds it out. And he collects all this stuff and he's got a great soup. It's just the stone doesn't matter. We kind of went through something a little bit similar to that with a game called IS Defense, which was one of these super highly rated, not that played games on Steam. I mean, it's like at one point it had like 700, 650 maybe, almost all positive reviews. I mean, people loved it, but it was never really got above the noise. But it was essentially a turret game. And so we looked at it, we talked to the people that made it and said, you know what, that basic mechanic, and that's the stone soup part of it, that basic mechanic could be folded into a great Heavy Fire game. Because the idea behind Heavy Fire, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, has always been be fun, be adrenaline inspiring, be totally in your face, engaging at all times, but low barriers to entry. It's for hardcore FPS people, and also for people that like FPSs but just don't have the patience, to make it all the way through Black Ops 4, whatever. Easy to pick up and play, and the turret style lent itself to that very nicely.
Does this game have any VR functionality?
Oh yeah. We have a full VR mode, and that was another thing, if I should have mentioned it, that we really liked about that mechanic. So here's the deal with VR. VR works pretty well looking left and right. But it's when you're walking forward that you run into trouble. It's you're walking forward that people get disoriented and get what we call game sick. I mean, that's where your problems happen. And by having VR in a legitimately turret game, or almost always a turret game, you eliminate that whole lateral movement dynamic. So the VR works extremely nicely.
Indeed. I mean, we have had many conversations about VR on this program. As VR is a pretty exciting frontier in this day and age. And in terms of VR supports, is it exclusive to one headset on the PC, or does it support both the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive and all that?
We plan to support everything. Honestly, right now PS4 is taking about 80% of our attention, but we'll support everything, at least Oculus and Vibe.
Right. Like, and how does the PSVR version compare to like the PC VR version?
Very comparable.
That's good to hear because that's not always 1-to-1, but that has more to do with the style of VR than anything else.
Yeah, well, and the fact that up until recently, you could just push more pixels on the PC, but with the Neo, which we of course support, it's pretty much exactly the same thing.
Mm. And I also see for the Xbox One you have mixer support.
Yes, we do.
Like, gotta admit, if I'm recalling correctly, that's Microsoft's streaming platform.
Right. It's like interactive Twitch is a big concept.
And exactly what does mixer support entail here?
Okay, well, full disclosure, we're still test playing a bit of it, so we'll see where we land. But like I say, the idea is interactive streaming. So you stream out your game, you have your followers watching you, and they can do stuff. If they save up enough bolts, they're called, they can give you extra ammunition. They will probably be able to initiate certain kinds of attacks for you. They can only help you, but they can help you some. And as a reward, you can give them back bolts. That's probably where we're headed.
Yeah, I've heard of other games doing that. Albeit, admittedly, yours is the first that I've heard for Mixer. Like, usually it's Twitch integration, but... and I suppose the question here is, what made you pick Mixer for the platform of choice?
Because, we like the idea of... The thing is, Twitch doesn't have that kind of interactivity. It just doesn't. And we liked being able to work on the native Microsoft system. And we like the interactivity. I mean, don't forget, we're the company, who did Major League Eating for the Wii way back, where you use the Wiimote to eat food. We're always happy to play with an interface.
Indeed. And it sounds like you're having fun with this.
Well, if you can't have fun, you might as well go out and get a real job.
True enough wisdom, I suppose.
Yeah, bad idea, but that'd be the logical thing to do.
Let's see. Up next is Pool Elite.
Yes.
Right. So, according to the PR materials here, this is a pool simulator with hyper-realistic physics.
Which is exactly right. It actually goes beyond hyper-realistic physics, and this is going to sound marketing-y, but hear me out. So here's the deal. Virtually every single pool simulator out there starts with a physics package, right? There's like 5 of them out there. And it's like you buy the physics package, you program it, you're good, right? And then you tell everyone it's hyper-realistic. This goes a big step further. So it starts with the physics package. But what's gone beyond that is there are 2, highly ranked world-class billiards players who've been very involved in this project. Each of them have put, I don't know, pick a number, 50, 100 hours, playing it and giving feedback on each shot they took. So it's not just that, the ball rolls the way, the physics package says it would, because any jerk can buy one off the street. But we started there and then got the feedback from these guys. It's like, yeah, that's right, but doesn't it feel a little slow? Or I could swear, it felt like the cue wasn't quite center, but yet the ball went as though it were tilted to the left or whatever. And that's why the physics are hyper-realistic in a way that's something that was only made theoretically and never tested with these people, never fine-tuned with these people, can't be.
I must admit, it's been a really long time since I've heard pool professionals involved in pool games.
What a weird idea. I mean, next you're going to have, auto garages with mechanics and hospitals with medical professionals and schools with teachers.
Sometimes they get up to
I have an idea. We can even have politics with competent politicians.
That would be a nice change.
Wouldn't it though? I'm sorry. I know this is a game show, not a fantasy talk radio show. So continue.
I'm like, yeah, we usually save the politics stuff for off recording, but yeah, it's like I understand the sentiment here.
Well, yeah. So long as we're not getting into details, I think we're good.
Anyway, now I see here that this isn't just one type of billiards. Like, it's not just 8 balls or snooker or what have you. You've got a number of games here. And my question relating to the pool professionals is, did they have input for like everything from 3 cushion to 9 ball and mini and snooker?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and these are all games that people like Mr. Magic, who's one of the professionals, plays at a champion competitive level.
Is snooker the one with all the white balls and then one red ball, or the other way around, or whichever it is?
It's the one with all the red balls.
Yeah, I thought snooker was the one with the colored balls, and you had to get them like warm to cool, or maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different games that involve using a cue to hit balls around a table.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And so how long has this project been in gestation?
Okay, so let me back up a step and just be, full disclosure, be very clear. This is an unusual project for us because we're working very closely with a partner that's done most of the development on this, and that's the company called Elite Games. They're a Turkish company of all things. They've been publishing pool games now mostly in Turkey and Eastern Europe for 4 or 5 years. And this is an evolution of what they've been working on. So they've supplied, almost all the basic stuff, certainly all the pool knowledge. We've been involved with the console translation because they haven't done a console game before. And the marketing and some other stuff around the edges to make the game more accessible. And I think we've helped a little bit with usability and stuff like that. But this, unlike the other things, is not purely us. And Elite Games is fantastic. They have my respect.
Gotta admit, not the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the words Elite Games, but that's mainly because of the British developer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I'm totally unrelated.
Yes. It's good to clarify that.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's see. So I see this game is coming to the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. I kind of want to zero in on the Nintendo Switch version because, as is so often the case, especially since what I've seen in footage, and so were there any sort of compromises that had to be made to get this game onto the Nintendo Switch, or does it stack up to its Xbox One and PlayStation 4 brethren?
Good question. I mean, and the true answer is we are fighting that battle right now. Ask me again in 3 months and I'll tell you. My expectation is we will actually wind up with something a little bit better on Switch, or certainly very different. Because here's the deal. Here's the big thing I've learned about Switch the hard way. We had thought of this. We had thought of Switch as a console, like the PS4, like the Xbox. But what we're realizing is it's really not. Again, this is my opinion, but based on my experience, based on what I've seen, based on what I believe, the Switch is much more a portable device. It is Game Boy Super Extra Deluxe. And so we will try to, and we're working on a couple of things now, and I think at least one of them is going to shake out, make sure that we have a game design that takes advantage of the portability and takes advantage of some of the sensors you have on the Switch, rather than just try to do a direct one-for-one port of what you have on these very powerful but very fixed console systems.
Right. And also in relation to the Switch version, are there any plans to use the Joy-Cons as like a billiard cue?
Well, that's what I meant. We will definitely. We're playing with a couple things, and I don't want to jinx myself by saying exactly what it is. But that is one of the most obvious things we're working on. So,
right.
Yes, I mean we're definitely going to be taking advantage of the platform.
All right. And in terms of specifications, are you targeting 720, 30 FPS or 1080, 30 or what have you?
Think we'll be at 720. That's my guess.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see. And I suppose
Let me add, by the way, that for this game, it makes sense just because, you really want a faster screen and higher resolution if you've got to draw a ton of stuff. If you've got a battlefield with trees and figures and lots of subtle movements, that's one thing. In this game, what really matters is that the balls move realistically, that the controls feel fluid, and that the camera works. Oh, and of course that you have a populated game, so you're not just playing yourself or a stupid robot, and a community, and that's where all the effort is going.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So this will have online multiplayer?
Oh yeah. Online multiplayer, community functions, daily, weekly, monthly tournaments, leagues, all of those things.
Oh, nifty. Like, do hope that works out for you. Like, I have no idea how communities gestate around pool games.
I mean, obviously, we're not going to know until we try it. But here's the number one thing you need. You need to have a certain critical mass. And the problem with a lot of these games, not just pool games, although pool games out there are, I think, pretty bad offenders, is that you walk into the lobby and it's like a ghost town. It's like there's nobody there. And that gets very frustrating because there's nobody to play. And it's like you can build all the community functions you want, but if no one's playing, it's no fun. And one of the great things we have, and we're incredibly grateful to the hardware makers who are letting us do this, is interoperability. So this will, although it's not the same game, it's not even almost the same game, but this will let you play with not only people on consoles, but on the Facebook version and the mobile version. So we think that, we can be running a minimum couple 100,000 people through the game based purely on, the fact that you've got these other versions playing. So again, you should not be in a situation where you're just sitting around hoping someone shows up.
So you're aiming for cross-platform play.
Exactly. And I don't mean to sound dismissive. We're not aiming for cross-platform play. We will have cross-platform play. I guarantee it.
Right, as much as possible. Sony hasn't allowed this.
Sony has. That's actually misunderstood. So Sony is extremely touchy about allowing Xbox or Microsoft cross-platform play. But for PC, well, actually, I take it back. I cannot speak to what Sony does, but I will say this. We found them extremely flexible in allowing cross-platform play with some other platforms.
Yeah, it's just they don't have a great rep with other consoles, and it's not just Minecraft either. Rocket League, very famously, does not have cross-platform.
Yes.
So I'm less than optimistic about like PlayStation 4 owners being able to interact with, say, Nintendo Switch or Xbox One. Though Xbox One and Switch, that could definitely happen since it's already happened.
And, again, we can pretty much guarantee a couple hundred, well, it's a bit grandiose. We can be pretty confident of a couple 100,000 players a month coming in through, a Facebook version, a mobile version. And even that is enough to populate a league table, make you give a community the stuff to form.
Right. And I suppose we should shift forward because I don't know how much time we have left.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So, to the final game of this showcase, and that is Home Sweet Home.
Yes. Boo!
Yes. And this is, in spite of its being listed for the summer, this is actually listed for the fall from what I see.
Yeah, right now we're talking about shipping it. Well, just so you... Mm-hmm. This is a fall game.
Okay. That aside, this is...
Early fall, by the way, but fall, yeah.
this is a first-person horror adventure title.
Exactly.
Now, admittedly, this isn't the most unpopulated genre of late, especially on the indie scene. Like, we've got things like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and the Outlast games, and what have you. And, my question is, what does this game offer uniquely in the first-person horror adventure genre?
I'm going to put that into two big buckets.
Okay.
What the game offers, and then the production values of the game. So, first bucket is that it offers a setting no one has done before. This is set in contemporary Thailand, but with figures from Thai mythology. So it's a well worked out sort of story of ghosts. And it's true to a sort of belief system. Might be going a bit far because I don't think many modern Thai people literally believe in these ghosts, but they're very well developed. They're very well fleshed out, and it's culturally interesting. I mean, again, I think we've all played games set in Japan coming out of our ears. We've all played games set in Europe. We've all done sort of the American thing, but this is a whole new place that most people aren't familiar with, and that by itself is neat. And secondly, the game, although this doesn't make it literally unique, it's a little bit different in that you are totally unarmed. You have no weapons at any point. Your only options are to run and hide.
Admittedly, yeah, that one is less different since I can think of a lot of indie horror games that do the whole hide mechanic.
And that gets us to the next point. And the key word there is indie. This is a really well fleshed out, high production value kind of thing. It's not a huge game, but it's pretty decent. It's decent sized.
Right.
And it just looks and feels really good. It is a decent sized professional team with the resources to get the details right, to get the effects right, to get the movements right, to get the music right, to get all these things right. And indie games are great, and some of them are really sophisticated. But this is the difference between a college student movie and a small studio movie.
I suppose. I mean, who is the developer on this?
It is a company called YGG. That is an abbreviation. I will not try the real name, but they are a company out of Thailand, and their primary business is very, very high-end graphics productions and advertising, CG modeling and advertising. And at some point, they're like, you know what? We should try gaming. Let's diversify into it. And although it doesn't happen often, they seem to have hit a home run right out of the gate.
And how did you come across this project?
Pretty randomly. We were looking for a project. Somewhere along the way, someone said, hey, there's this really great game on Steam. We looked at it. We reached out to the company and said, you know what? We would really like your permission to port this to console. And they said, yeah, okay, fine. So it was almost that easy.
Yeah. So is it already out on PC?
Yeah, absolutely. You can download it from Steam. Now, the console version will have a little bit of a twist. It's not exactly the same game. We didn't want to release the exact same thing, so there's going to be a little bit of extra content, but they're very similar. And I will add, by the way, this is another place where we think VR is being used very effectively, and it will be available as VR.
Makes sense. First-person indie horror game, or first-person horror game, very amiable to VR. I mean, even Resident Evil 7 went in that direction.
Yeah, and this is very much a sort of classic jump scare game.
And what consoles are you aiming for? Is it going to be Xbox One and PlayStation 4, or is there going to be a Switch version as well?
Right now, we are Xbox One and PS4, and we may well do a Switch version next year. God knows I would love to.
All right, and I suppose my final question at this point is, what are your plans for E3?
We will be there. We have a meeting room. We don't have a huge booth, but we've got a nice meeting room. The 4 titles will be playable by the press or anyone else who has sort of a serious interest.
Right.
And I think we're gonna have fun.
That sounds like it. Right. Yeah. So I'll turn this over to my colleagues to see if they have any final questions at this juncture.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to you talk about all the games you've been working on, and I'm looking forward to trying, well, at least some of them out. I'm not super into horror games, but
well, I mean,
I trust that one will be good too. And I am interested in a horror game with a unusual folklore basis, because that is something that's always helpful.
I'm not sure if Mastiff here has access to the PC version, like game codes and such.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's
Anyway,
just...
I'm just...
We can give you game codes. We can get you codes.
Maybe I'll try it out sometime anyway, even if we're not reviewing them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We can... The PC version is available now, so we can review that now.
Oh, well.
Not necessarily now, but, within the next few weeks. Probably after E3, given our schedule. But yeah, if you want to send us some Home Sweet Home codes, we can review the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
That does sound interesting, because a lot of, especially like Southeast Asian, some countries have some really cool horror monsters and stuff.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Usually we ask for codes because that's how many people work on the review stuff. But and yeah, it does look interesting. So.
It is a very, very cool game.
So yeah, we'll have more on Home Sweet Home PC edition in the next few weeks, and looking forward to the rest of your games. Hopefully they find the success that they deserve.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And hopefully we'll have you on the program again.
I would love to come back if you'll have me.
Oh, no doubt. All right. So yeah, keep an eye out for Mastiff's 4 games coming up this summer and beyond. And Pettyfan, play us to. Actually, no. We got to do the news first.
Yeah, play us to the news with the song we have for that we totally have for that.
Yeah.
One day.
No, probably not one day, because honestly, we don't format switch enough to warrant it.
Anyway.
But anyway, just that's kind of a force of habit thing here. Mm-hmm. So I guess onward to the news. It's always a bit of an awkward thing when we change things up, especially at the last minute. Anyway, Ogre, why don't you go first, because you're not going to be here next week.
Yeah, I won't be here next week. I have something to take care of during the show time then, so... let's see. Recordings are going fine. We're making good headway through Super Mario RPG.
Have the comments want you dead yet for missing hidden chests?
No, I think we've made it pretty clear that we're not going for everything.
Good to know.
If it's something that was like really easy to miss, that was like you couldn't get it back.
I mean,
I think that's like the only one was like the one to the castle, but then again, I don't know where every chest is, so.
Well, I mean, there is an item in game that clues you in on where a hidden chest is, but yeah, I guess if you really do want to go and get them, you can, because you got the only missable chest.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going fine and everything. I'm glad that Naka is in a house where he can have air conditioning on, because it's been 90 degrees or so for the past couple days. And I would not have liked that in an area where we need to turn off the air conditioning to record, because that would suck balls. Sweaty balls.
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
Let's see. Personal news, not much. I'm still playing through that Mega Man Legacy collection. Turns out I suck ass at doing the snowboard thing from Mega Man 8. Oh.
Jump.
Yeah, jump,
Yeah.
slide.
And that was just in Frostman stage. I haven't gotten to Wily shit yet, so
Ugh.
Yeah, nobody likes the snowboarding in Mega Man 8.
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder why it would never came back at all.
Surprise! There's a whole level devoted to it in 11.
Yeah. Then a bunch of gaming news came out yesterday, and I'm waiting to get paid so I can go to GameStop and go like, pre-order it for me, and then just walk out.
Yes, it's been a busy week in terms of game news. We won't be. Yeah,
I
won't
think
act-
the best I could say is E3's gonna be weird because I don't know how they're gonna manage it because it feels like they've just been talking about the other stuff beforehand, and so like, is it gonna be even bigger? Is there gonna be like a Mega Man X9 out there now or something like that? Is Mega Man Legends 3 gonna pop up now? Oh my god, is there gonna finally be a Super Mario RPG 2 somehow?
I
What
think
can they
hell
do
would freeze
next to blow
over.
our minds? But yeah, no, it's been a fun couple of days to say the least on that front.
Who knows what tomorrow may yield?
Yeah.
Not even joking. That, like, yeah, it's definitely the run up to E3 when we're getting announcements of this caliber.
Yeah.
Like,
But let's see, anything else? I guess not a whole lot there, so
all right, Petty fan.
I finally got that smartwatch thing I was looking to get, the Samsung Gear Sport. It's pretty alright, except I think there's something wrong with the battery in this one, so I need to send it to Samsung, which shouldn't cost me anything except maybe shipping, so as far as gaming news, I've been playing a little bit of Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I've also been chugging along through the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. I just kind of skipped over the first one because I've never been good at that one. But I think I'm like halfway through on 2.
Well, they have updated Crash Bandicoot 1, where
They have, but it still has the really stiff jumping where if you're not perfect, you're dead.
right. I'm just saying you can save after every level.
Yeah, it's still, I just keep getting frustrated on, oh, you were off, less than half a second on your jump. You're dead now. I mean, it's
Right.
more doable. It's more just a patience thing.
Like, anything else?
Only thing really in personal news is I made an appointment to see the doctor about my wrist issues, and I'm gonna be waiting till like the end of next month for that, so that's gonna be fun. Hopefully it's nothing serious, like at best, I have to wear a wrist brace of some kind when I'm at my computer and not having to worry about, carpal tunnel surgery or anything like that.
Yeah, that would be good to not have to do.
Indeed. And I think I'm done.
All right, Galix.
Not a whole ton going on here. I've been splitting my time between Splatoon and Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition because I really like the first ones, and it's nice to be able to play them on a system that does not even slightly really struggle. There are some weird bits sometimes, especially when you're playing it for a long time in portable mode. It'll like take some time to recognize that you've done a thing or something, but it's still way better than the 3DS version and a little better than the Wii U version, and it has all the features from the 3DS version, so definitely overall an improvement especially if you skipped Legends or didn't play any of them. If you like Zelda, I would definitely check this one out. So I haven't tried the games for this week, but they're just the two free to start games or whatever. Free to play. So I should have time to do that tomorrow.
It doesn't take long to get into them.
Yeah, that kind of game is usually... They don't usually lock deeper parts of the play experience beyond large quantities of startup time.
Yeah. Anything else?
Not really a whole lot. So I will pass unless I think of something urgently, and then I will hold my tongue because I don't want to interrupt you.
All right. Highlight.
Well, it's been hot and humid here, and there's been some rain from the passing storm as well, which I'm thankful for. We didn't do anything for Memorial Day weekend. Like, I don't think we ever really have done anything besides visiting my grandparents' resting places. Not really anything going on personal wise. In terms of gaming, I'm more excited for Mega Man 11 than I was before. With that recent trailer, and I'm looking forward to it. I've tried out the games that we're doing for Sunday, and yeah, they're not. Doesn't really take much to get into them, and been trying to finish up Dragon's Dogma still, and I'm at the end game. Just haven't gone to the end, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Just upgrading stuff before doing so. Otherwise, that's about it for me.
All right.
Oh, I did remember one other thing. I have actually, since we talked about it last week, I've tried Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and that's a pretty solid update to the classic Castlevania stuff.
Good to know. Right, so my go. Yeah, I've been preoccupied with our E3 plans. E3 is coming up here in about 2 weeks. And we've been having a lot of discussion of mapping out exactly what we're going to cover, what we're going to do for a mainline show. Hint, it's going to be pretty light. I'm like, we don't have a guest booked this year. At least not for Fragments. We do have a plan for MSP that week, but that's a bit tenuous at the moment. I'm like, Petty Fan can supply updates since he's been handling that. And indeed, next week's show, we're looking into having somebody from the media side of things, because it is not impossible, but it's fucking difficult to get people on the program when E3 comes about.
E3,
not just,
GDC.
Well, it's not just next week, people are going to start departing for E3.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people have to travel with significant amounts of stuff and set up and...
Right. So the point of order is we are looking for like a YouTuber, something of that caliber next week. Granted, a lot of those people will be also heading out to E3, but it's probably not as hard as finding a developer. So more on that as it develops across the week. And next week, indeed, we'll probably be formally announcing our E3 plans. What we're covering, when we're going to be on air, who's going to be showing up.
Because we will be live doing some of the events, at least.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, it's going to be a blitz.
Oh, God.
I'm like, it's like, so, with that in mind, play us to the topic of discussion. given all the news that's broken out over the past week and indeed the past, say, 24 hours, you might be thinking we're going to be talking about, say, Pokemon Let's Go.
But we haven't had time to think about that yet, so we're not.
Yeah, not this week, maybe next week. This week we're actually going to be talking about Tencent Games. And the reason I wanted to talk about Tencent Games is they are literally the biggest. They're the biggest video game company out there.
That you've probably never heard of.
Yeah, you've probably never heard of them, but you've probably engaged in at least one of their products because they're invested in a lot of things, as is the bigger Tencent company. But like specifically Tencent Games, they are pretty heavily invested in things like mobile gaming and the free-to-play sector, and they are behind so many of the biggest titles. For example, they have a majority stake in Riot Games. You know, the people who put out League of Legends. They own Supercell, the developers of Clash of Clans, among other things.
So yeah,
indeed,
if it's a genre of game that's popular with a lot of people who aren't necessarily, although sometimes also includes hardcore gamers, they probably have a stake in at least one of the games that's involved in that.
Right. It should be noted that even though they might own a part or near most of it, they're pretty hands off with their developers or their investments. You can see this with this week because they are actually invested in both Bluehole, PUBG developer and publisher, and Epic Games. They hold a sizable stake of equity in Epic, who puts out
Fortnite.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a thing in the throat. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Bluehole has sued Epic Games. You know, there's a whole fucking screed on that
for infringing on the concept of battle royale games and possibly something about frying pans.
Yeah, it's a lot of sour grapes. I'm like,
and it's going to be funny when that case gets tossed out because you know it's going to be.
Well, it's like the last time something like this happened. It was Silicon Knights, and go look up what happened to them. It wasn't pretty. Because here's the thing. Unreal Engine powers PUBG. Yeah, suing the people who license out your engine, not the smartest idea, because you know what they can do? They can revoke your license.
Yeah, and that's never good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure PUBG has enough money to find another one, but if Epic Games pulls the license for Unreal, then they have to get rid of Unreal, all the code and everything.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's the thing that Silicon Knights didn't do, and that fucking doomed them. Anyway, and on and on the list goes. Last week they made a sizable grab for the Path of Exile developer Gatling Gears. Not as big as, say, League of Legends or Clash of Clans or what have you, but it's still a sizable free-to-play game. And I'll also note, even though the free-to-play sector is their bread and butter, not the only thing they do. They do publish Chinese versions of various games, like the aforementioned PUBG. They do a localized version of that because they have to be within regulations.
Yeah, China has rules.
Yes. Chief among them is you have to partner with a Chinese company. Of course, the Chinese consumer base is a big reason why Tencent is so big. Like, because, billion people plus. And mobile and free-to-play gaming are really huge in China. That all goes back to the 90s and when China banned console games. Like, there wasn't a competition.
What was that?
Nothing. There wasn't the console game to the console game sector to compete. Like, among other things. Like, and also worth noting, their own homegrown game, Arena of Valor, is the biggest game in the world. Once again, in a very literal sense, in terms of like people playing. 80 million daily active players and 200 million monthly active players. Granted, we know it over here as Realm of Valor or Honor of Kings. Yeah, it had, for whatever reason, they changed the name over here. I'm not sure how big it is internationally, but it seems, China alone makes this thing very, very profitable. And my next point is, it's not just the games as service, the free-to-play, the mobile sector that they're invested in. They're actually invested in some of the biggest console publishers out there. Very major headline recently is they made an investment in Ubisoft, partly to help them ward off a hostile takeover. Also, it's just good business sense to have a diversified portfolio. Like they have a sizable investment in Activision Blizzard, which, and I've seen lately that people have starting to get concerned about Tencent because, well, they have a lot of tendrils in a lot of places.
And they're not. It's not as if they're doing anything really with those tendrils or leverage that they might have, but the concern that they could is still a thing.
Yeah, I get the concern, but the thing is, that would only really apply to shit like Supercell, which they wholly own, or maybe Gatling Gears, which they which they have 80% in. Like, it's like they don't own that much in every developer that they're invested in. Like Epic Games, it's only 40%. Granted, that might give them some sway, some power, but from everything I've heard, Tencent is pretty hands-off with their investments for the moment. If this changes, I'm sure it's going to come up. Like, and and this is kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about them, is because it's really fascinating that that this company fuels so much of the modern gaming landscape, and yet their name really doesn't resonate, not in the gaming sector and not even in the larger pop culture, because once again, Tencent is not just games, that's just a division. The larger Tencent is one of the biggest companies in the world, but they don't have the brand recognition of, say, a Facebook or a Google. And I'm wondering how much is that down to them being Chinese and how much of that is just by design.
Well, yeah, and also they mostly do sort of back-end-ish stuff. Not stuff that's right in the consumer eye.
Well, at least over here. Like, in China, I'd imagine they might be a household name because, once again, just going into the video game space, they are more than just mobile games. they actually have like a chat application, and they have their own Steam-like service, and so on and so forth. Like, I could definitely see them, being the Chinese Valve or the Chinese Facebook or whatever equivalent you want to stamp here. And I suppose the ultimate point here is it's definitely worth keeping an eye on of what Tencent does, because once again they have a lot of hands and a lot of pies, and that's probably only going to increase as time goes by. Hopefully they don't turn into another EA.
Well, at least they've always been kind of in a lot of games in the mobile sector, but like because of that, people don't have. Well, I guess there's two things about EA. There's the thing about the games they make not being particularly innovative, and then there's the thing about them buying up other developers and then discarding them.
Right. Anyway, so I think that's gonna about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. So the week ahead, a lot more floaty than usual, a lot more fluid because, well, once again, we're approaching the Gulf Stream of E3.
We're all fluid down here.
All right. But before that, our Sunday review schedule, we have 4 games slated, but there are reasons for that. First of all, the first 2 are games I'm handling, in Unforeseen Incidents and Omen Sight. Omen Sight might be very short and bitter because I am having problems with it. The game has some severe stability issues.
Yeah, you said it was like always crashing reliably at a certain point, so
yeah, it's like
that makes it difficult to review other parts of it. Certainly,
I've tried 3 times; it crashes in the exact same spot. What I'm probably going to do, a couple days, is restart the campaign and choose the other level, see if I can't make some progress there. But I don't like. It says the engine is crashing, which is odd. It's UE4. And I can run Unreal Engine. Like, I had no problems with City of Brass. But yeah, it's like if this is a thing that can't be fixed, then we're going to be limited here. Because, once again, this is the problem when we only get one code. If somebody has a problem with that, it's, there's no backup people to see if that problem exists in the game or if it's with a system, a person's system. So that aside, we're also reviewing 1982 and Echoes Plus, a pair of games that were created with this thing called the App Game Kit.
It's a kit for making games that are apps.
Right. And some interesting developments have happened along those lines. More on that in the coming weeks, let's just say. Well, outside of the fact that we are looking to have they are called the game creators, so it's a bit odd to have that be their name. And what we are having the game creators on in late July, or at least attempting to. And they may be giving us their app game kit here, which would be the first time we would be reviewing the creation tool sets that make games. And
yeah, we that would definitely be different.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just kind of trying to wrap our heads around that. So that's what's forthcoming in the weeks ahead. We don't really know how to deal with this currently. Petty Fan has some experience in this area, and he's going to tinker around with the trial version. Anyway, coming up next week, We are looking to have a Tuesday show with Douglas Bogart of Limited Run Games, but this is one of those things that's not only been delayed several times, it's happening once again in the E3 Square Zone. So this could be passed down further. He just got back from Japan, so I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Yeah, just there's a significant chance that interview will fail to someone's need to wax their dog.
Yeah. And
at E3.
Yeah, and next Wednesday is TBA. Hope we might have an update on that on Sunday. We might not. It's like our primary target hasn't responded, so we're kind of switching gears here. And I think that'll about do it for our plans for over the next week. So until Sunday, I shall wish you good gaming.